The flower sequence is one of the most exciting sequences because it's built on all these elements of tension.
Manny, Ellie, and Diego walk into the jungle of misery, and they're surrounded by all these beautiful flowers, but Ellie has a funny feeling.
Hold on.
Why? What's wrong?
And Manny, being overprotective, mistakes this as she's got a crave and she needs to eat.
There's some fruit.
No, Manny!
I wouldn't do that if I were you.
So he sees a little piece of fruit and he's insisting on going to get it for Ellie. Turns out the fruit is a lure for this giant man-eating plant.
Manny!
It's time to get buck wild.
Suddenly Buck goes flying up in the air and dives into this plant.
When Buck goes down, we set up this classic action movie, you know, the ticking clock.
It's a little bit like Jack Bauer in 24. What's happening is digestive juices. It's rising, and Buck gets his knife. He just barely reaches out, and he cuts the other thing, and he defuses the bomb.
Tourists.
The challenging thing about making the sequence is coming up with ideas that were new, fresh, and unique.
At this point of the film, you need something exciting to keep the second act going. You have to put the characters in peril.
It's important to up the threat level and the tension, particularly in a series of movies, because you want to continually bring new experiences to the audience. If you're not careful about creating tension and maintaining interest, then people will simply lose interest in the film.
One of the things that we discovered early on, you can't just have a bunch of sequences like, well, now they encounter this kind of dinosaur, and now they encounter that kind of dinosaur. And we thought about what other kinds of things would exist in a place like this. And one of the things that we thought of very early on was this idea that the plants are huge.
And actually, in doing Ice Age 2, we had an idea for a set piece with Scrat, the squirrel. He'd get trapped in a carnivorous plant, and the carnivorous plant eat his nut and all that stuff.
And we looked at this piece of art of the Scrat being lured in by this plant. And I thought, man, that's really cool. We should do something with that.
It never came to be fully realized. So when we were planning Ice Age 3, I always said, well, let's come up with a story for the plant. What if Manny, the gigantic creature, falls inside of this plant?
We were always looking for ways in the Lost World to be unique, and this was a pretty interesting way.
When we defined the characters that would be in the movie, we go through extensive research to see what kind of look we're looking for.
The carnivorous plant, we're going through some references and looking at various kinds of plants. There's the Venus flytrap type and the pitcher plant.
And then we have a challenge of let's come up with a plant that belongs to the Ice Age world, because the whole movie has a style of its own and it had to belong there. And that's when Foot came up with this idea that the plant has these tentacles, like that would feed the plant.
Which are sort of snake-like, and they curl up, and they have to grab, and they have to pick the characters up. That made it feel scary, but believable.
The carnivorous plant was challenging because we were really focusing on the realism of the way something would move. You really have to use your imagination with a carnivorous plant that eats things in the jungle to try and figure out what that might look like.
Its design is clearly taken from nature, but it's so huge and angry looking that I would just panic and be squashed. I would need Buck to help me out.